If you think underpainting is useless, you're already making a mistake. You can try to paint everything at once, sure, but you'll fight your painting the whole time. The old masters didn't work like that, and neither should you. When you look at finished painting, especially from the old masters, it often feels effortless, like it just appeared on the canvas fully formed. But that's an illusion. What you are really looking at is a process that was built step by step, layer by layer, starting from something much simpler. And that something simpler is usually the underpainting. Now, could you paint everything in one go? Of course, a lot of painters do. But the question is not whether you can. The question is what you gain or lose by doing that. Because when you skip underpainting, you are trying to solve too many problems at once. You are thinking about color, value, edges, structure, all at the same time. And that's where things often start to fall apart. The result? Paintings that feel a little flat, a little uncertain, like something is missing, even if you can't quite explain what it is. Underpainting separates those problems. It allows you to focus first on the structure of the painting, the light, the shadow, the form, without worrying about color just yet. And once the structure is solid, everything you add on top becomes much easier to control. In this particular painting, I started with a simple setup, nothing overly complicated. And that's intentional, because even the choice of subject affects how you approach the painting. Some objects are full of tiny details, complex structures. Others are smoother, simpler, easier to read. And before I even begin, I'm already thinking about how difficult the painting will be and how I want to build it. If you would like to dive deeper into my painting process, see full-length tutorials, or access my books and behind-the-scenes materials, you can join me on Patreon. There are over 100 videos and a ton of extra resources waiting for you there. I'm adding new content all the time, so there's always something fresh to learn or explore. You can also subscribe here on YouTube so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. The Patreon link is in the description. Check it out. Not because I'm trying to make things easier, but because I want the process to work with me, not against me. The composition itself is built around a classical triangular structure. The daisies form the top, the jug sits in the middle, and the bread anchors the bottom. It's a very stable arrangement. But at the same time, I introduce a small counterbalance on the side, just enough to keep the composition from feeling too rigid. This balance between structure and freedom is something you see again and again in classical painting. The same applies to the light. In this setup, the light comes from the left side. That creates a clear separation between light and shadow, which is essential if you want the forms to feel believable. To start to see how the light wraps around the objects, how it turns into halftones, and then gradually falls into shadow. And inside that shadow, something interesting happens. It's not just one flat dark area. There's a subtle shifts, small variations, hints of reflected light. And this is where underpainting becomes incredibly powerful. It's because when you build those relationships early on, you're not just placing dark and light. You're building a structure that will support everything that comes later. Another important element here is edges. Edges are something I think about from the very beginning, not just at the end of the painting. Some edges are sharp, some are soft, some almost disappear completely. And this variation is what creates focus and depth. Your eye naturally goes to the sharp edges, while the softer ones recede. So even in the underpainting, I'm already deciding what should stand out and what should stay quiet. Now, when it comes to the actual underpainting this piece, I used raw umber instead of burnt umber, which changed the process a bit. It's a little less about pushing final detail and more about establishing the overall volume and value relationships. And that's perfectly fine, because the goal at this stage is not to finish the painting, but to build a strong foundation. something that will carry through all the next layers. Even if the values are not yet exactly where they will be in the final painting, even if the background is not as dark as it will become later, that's okay. What matters is that the structure is there. And here is something important. When you build a painting this way, layer by layer, you start to get something that's very difficult to achieve in a single pass. You get, you know what? Yes, it is a depth. Not just visual depth, but a kind of richness in the surface. The layers begin to interact with each other. Some areas stay more transparent, others become more opaque. You get subtle shifts between warm and cool tones, especially in the shadows. You get a feeling that the painting has something beneath the surface. And that's something you simply don't get the same way when everything is done in one go. It doesn't mean one approach is right and the other is wrong, but they led to very different results. For me, underpainting is not about making things more complicated. On the contrary, it's about making the process clearer. Instead of solving everything at once, you build the painting step by step, from simple to complex. And that gives you control. So, next time you look at a painting and wonder why it feels solid, why it has depth, why the light just works, there's a good chance it didn't start with color. It starts here, with structure, with values, with underpainting. And everything else was built on top of that. And that's all for today, my mates. If you would like to see the full version of this process, you can join my YouTube channel membership, Old Masters tier, where you will find this complete video workshop along with many others I've created for you. And if you want to go even deeper, you can also join me, of course, on my Patreon, where I share more in-depth content, extended lessons, and additional workshops designed to help you take your painting further. You can also visit my website, matemerch.com, if you are looking for some cool art merch, prints, and more. And if you decide to grab something, don't forget to use code M8SALE at the checkout for 10% off your entire order. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for watching, my mates, and see you in another video. Bye bye.